When it comes to laying a shed base, there are a lot of options available. But in my experience, what I'm going to be showing you today is the cheapest and easiest of all shed bases. I'll be walking you through step by step on how to install these plastic grid systems, including a cost breakdown at the end. So let's get into it. So this is the area where I'm going to be moving my old shed to. And I'm going to start off by marking out the area that needs digging out with a few stakes and a string line. And my shed is a 8-foot by 6-foot shed. So I've ordered myself 24 of these plastic grids, which will give me a little bit of overlap on all of the sides just to make sure that I can center it in there. I'm going to measure just a tad over 2 meters from my corner peg. And one really simple way to make sure that you've got 90-degree angles on all of these is to actually measure the diagonals, and they should be exactly the same. If you've got a tolerance of sort of 10, 20 mil, that's going to be fine as well. There we go. So now this is strung out. I am going to make sure to dig just outside of the string line, because what I don't want to happen is when I put these grids in, that they are too tight in there. So I'd rather have just a tad more dug out than not enough. So now it's time to grab a spade and start digging all of this out. Now, when it actually comes to digging out the grass itself, a method that I like to use is a grid method. What I'll do is I'll grab a very sharp spade like one that I've got here, and I'll actually dig around about 1 by 1 meter area, and then I'll cut that area up into grids. And this allows you to just shovel out a spoonful at a time very quickly, and it does take a lot of the randomness and the effort out of it. And obviously any sort of manual labor like this is very hard work, so just mentally prepare yourself to get a bit tired. I imagine I will not have this jumper on in about 10 minutes time. Yeah, the jumper's coming off. As you can see, I've now dug out a small area, but that is probably the most efficient way I've found of digging out something like this. I'm not too worried about checking for level at this stage. Right now, I'm just focused on getting all of the old turf up, and then I'll level it afterwards. So I'll catch you once I've done the rest. As you can see, I've now got all of this dug out. It took about 2 hours to do in total. The next thing I need to do is level this off, and just having a quick look with my spirit level, I can tell that it is a lot higher in this corner than it is over there. So what I'm going to need to do next is get the shovel again and dig out some of the soil in this corner and keep checking it with my level just to make sure that I've got a nice level base. After raking this out, it's still pretty obvious that it's a lot higher in this corner. So what I'm going to do is grab a pitchfork and loosen up all of the soil and then rake it out more evenly. This is a good option to go for if you didn't want to be doing multiple runs to the tip or buy yourself a skip. This way you're not actually having to lose any of the soil or the material that you're digging up. So you can see that that corner that was about 3 inches higher than the rest of it, I've now loosened it off nicely. So now I'll just go ahead and rake that out. So now what I'm going to do is just grab a spirit level, and I'm dragging it over the soil and looking to keep that bubble right in the middle. And the reason I'm doing this is this will let me know where the high points are, and then maybe where I need to fill a little bit in. So I can see I've probably dug out a little bit too much in that corner. So I can throw a bit of soil back in there, and this will get me even closer just to be that perfect level. And I'll just do this the whole way along until it's looking more level. Then you can just stamp on the big bits, break them all up. You don't want big bits under it. As you can see, I did decide to do one completely optional step, which was actually lay on top of all of this soil some sharp sand. And the only reason I did this is I had a few bags of sharp sand left over from another project in the garden. You do not have to do this, but it does make leveling it out just that slightly bit easier, because sand will naturally fill in them cracks a little bit easier than soil will. Now, once you've leveled everything out, you are going to want to put down a layer of weed fabric. The stuff I'm using here is again left over from another project, but you should expect to pay around 20 to 30 pounds for this sort of area of weed fabric. So now that is laid out, if you're like me, you might want to put some weights in the corners just to stop this blowing everywhere with the wind, as it is kindly demonstrating now. So you do want to make sure that when you're putting these down, that you have them facing the same way as they go in. So 2 of the sides have these little male adapters, and the other 2 have the female. So you just want to make sure that you've got both of the male pointing at the bottom left as you put them in, or whatever direction you put them in, just keep that consistent, and that way they should all slot in nicely as you go along. And just be sure just to tread them in, just to make sure they've clicked together nicely. And that is all of the grids in. And this is what I was saying. So each of these grids, on some sides they've got these bits, and then on the other side they have sort of the catches that sit in them. And the method that I found works best was to make sure that you've always got the two sides that have the little inlets on them on the same side as you're putting each one of these down. So now all of those grids are down. I'm just going to go around with a Stanley knife and make sure that the weed fabric is cut back nice and neat. And now that these are all locked into place, it's time to finally put in the pea gravel. The gravel that I'm using is this is Pea Gravel. The reason that the manufacturers recommend using this, it is going to fall in nicely and maximize the amount of stone you have in between those grids. You can use larger stones, but you are just going to have some more gaps in there. It's not a problem if you are just installing a shed on it, but if you're using this to put something down like a driveway, then you do need to make sure that you're using the pea gravel. If you are looking to save yourself some money on the pea gravel, then you can do what I've done here and just put it around the edges. The manufacturers actually recommend that this is all you need to do if you are just laying a shed. The main reason being is you're allowing the drainage around the edge to go through the stones that you've put in. Because I've got enough pea gravel, I am going to fill the whole area, but like I say, if you are putting a shed on it, just make sure you do the edges at a minimum. And then if you do have any excess, just make sure you get that off. Otherwise, obviously that's going to be a big lump in the foundation of your shed. And there you have it, one incredibly quick and cheap shed base. If you liked this video, then make sure to check out the other videos on my channel and hit the subscribe button so you never miss a future video. And until next time, happy building.